never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turning around.
Hi, folks. Welcome back to Neff Inspiration, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stephan Neff. A fantastic day for an interview. And I've met many people, and trauma comes in so many forms. But my guest today, Marcy Langlois, she actually has got quite a collection. I love it. She was born with a cleft palate, and that can be quite a severe, not just speech impediment, but if it is very severe, it can be a life-threatening thing for your little munchkin. So therefore, surgery is a good thing. Well, she went on to actually have 33 surgeries. Can you imagine what that does from a trauma point of view to a young girl over her growing up formative years? And then let's just not stop there. Let's add in more trauma, a bit of here, a bit of there. And we're going to dive into that. But today, this woman who's sitting here with me is an amazing light because she has been in the darkness. So I can't wait to hear about this transformation. And I can't wait to hear more about the lessons that she had to learn the hard way. Marcy, welcome to my show.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm just so thrilled to talk to you. I've been looking forward to this for weeks.
Thank you so much. No, it is amazing. Marcy, that is, I don't know where to start with you because you have got such a beautiful transformation, but ultimately there's so many traumas that were defining you. And trauma comes in layers in our lives, and you are the classic example. How severe was the speech impediment to start off with? When I say speech impediment, the cleft lip, was it something that the doctors were really worried about with regards to feeding and with regards to actually you being a newborn?
Yeah, so I actually was fed. I'm 48, just to give you perspective, right, of the technology that was available at that time.
Hmm.
But when I was born, my mom actually fed me with an eyedropper
Right.
because I had no ability to suck
Hmm.
or intake food in any way. So that was a big deal. And then my
Hmm.
speech was dramatically impacted. I spent like 6 years in speech lessons
Wow. Okay.
to straighten it all out.
Okay. And that is, of course, that's a huge challenge there. Um, was that was putting a strain on any family. Was there a loving relationship with your mom?
My mom is amazing. My
Ah.
mom is my hero. She has fought for me since the day I was born. And I have a really wonderful relationship with her. My father, it gets pretty tense.
Okay, that's interesting. But it's so lovely to hear that you had that support and that feeling of love because it's one thing to go through such a trauma because of the trauma. If you then add in the other trauma of a abandonment or of a lack of love or all those kind of things, that can be so brutal. Wow.
Mhm.
And these surgeries, were they all within the first 6, 7 years, or was that drawn out? Because often enough, I mean, I had my teeth knocked out at 13, and I didn't get permanent front caps until I was 18, because your face is still
Right.
changing. Was it the same story with you?
Yeah, so my first surgery actually started when I was 3 months old.
Hmm.
And then the last surgery I had ended up right around the age of 17.
Exactly. Makes
So as just as I was growing and developing, they kept operating basically to
absolutely.
keep up with my growth and change.
That's what I expected. And you said that you had intense speech therapy, but was that really 100%? Or was that in your teenager years, was that holding you back?
Still to this day, honestly, I can still have like slushy or slurred speech.
Right.
I still will notice that on a certain word, or if I get talking too
Uh,
quickly, trying to make a point,
yeah.
those kinds of things. But really, once I was done with speech therapy lessons, I feel like 95% of my speech was actually pretty good,
Oh,
honestly.
brilliant. Brilliant.
Yes.
Any bullying that came from that?
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up in this really small town of like 250 people in this
Mm,
small uh town up in Vermont. And I didn't know because in my community, everybody loved me and I just thought I was normal like everybody else. But then I went to school and all of those
mm.
kids at school, I went across the lake into New York State and I didn't know any of those kids. And when I got there, they very quickly let me know that I was very different.
How did you cope with that?
Um, I didn't really, I didn't want to go to school.
Mm,
I would cry because the kids were mean to me. Um, it just made me feel terrible about who I was. Like, there's nothing I can do about the way I look.
mm,
And here you are making me feel really terrible about it,
mm,
right? Like, I would love to change this too.
mm.
And that was about as far as I got. I mean, as a 5, 6 year old child, I don't think we have any ability really beyond that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. But I guess where my question is leading is how soon did coping mechanisms change into a survival coping mechanism in the sense of either fight and flight or indeed escapism? And escapism can be amazingly effective, as you and I have proven later in our lives. How did it
Mhm.
continue? I mean, it is there you were bullied as a young child. How did the story go on?
Yeah, I see now where you're going with this. I
Mm,
got you. Yeah, my escapism and my coping mechanisms, even at an early age, as I think all the way back, was grounded and rooted in being whoever you wanted me to be, right? I could just I wanted you to like me and approve of me so much. So I was the overachiever, like times 1,000. I was the best kid at basketball. I was the best kid at reading. I was the best kid that could solve all the math problems the quickest. You know what I mean? I was the funniest. I was the fastest.
yeah,
It was bled into every area of my life because I was so desperately seeking that approval.
beautiful. Which of course is great for you in an academic development, for you to shine, to actually be out there and get external validation. Now, that can go
Mhm.
two ways in a school. On the one hand, you can become the teacher's pet and the bullying can get worse. On the other hand, people
Right.
say, wow, okay, she is really good. Hey, look, Marcy, can you teach me how that works? Which way did it go?
More the other way with the kids. See,
Yeah.
because I was so closed off and walled off, I didn't want anybody to get too close to me. So like being the teacher's pet was never my thing. But having a comradeship with my peers and
Ah,
like, yeah, I'll show you how to shoot layups after school or
yeah,
that kind of stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
that was my thing.
perfect. And ultimately, that is a nice thing. So far, minus the 26 surgeries, you're describing my childhood. Exactly the same. I had
Wow,
exactly the
wow.
same coping mechanisms. There was some bullying, and suddenly by being the best at school, you get this validation. And that was actually quite a cool thing. Maybe with hindsight, this was actually, despite the fact that there was so much trauma there as well in my life, it was actually one of the nicer times. I guess the easier times because I I got the validation. And my parents were proud of me because I brought home good grades. So it was actually still that was the positive side, but the people pleasing, the external seeking external validation when deep inside you might not think the same of you. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I hear you, girl. I hear you. Okay,
Yeah.
so far so good. I mean, you look like a success story from the outside at the moment. Here you were 17, 18, going there. School grades are good. People like you. Well, what's the story? So, what are you complaining about? Well, how did you continue?
From there, high school was really crazy for me. So I went to a Catholic school up until I was in the 6th grade.
Yeah,
And then I went to then I went to a public school.
yeah.
And it was like day and night, literally. In a Catholic school, it was very strict, and this is how it is, and this is what you do, and this is how you do it, and you're going to do it the way I tell you to do
Yeah.
it. And then when you go to a public school, it's not anything like that. It felt like going to the zoo to me. Like there was no boundaries, there were no real rules. You could get away with so much. And that really changed a lot of things for me, honestly. And so as I went into middle school and then on to high school, um, I just felt like I could get away with anything. So I started drinking, I started smoking cigarettes, then I started smoking weed, and then, right, like it just slowly became like, this is who I am and this is what I do. And
What's the
then,
what's the reason? What did the
yeah,
alcohol and the weed give you at that time?
yeah, it was like this relief, right? Like this really deep sense of relief. As soon as I would put that substance in my body, that aching, that loneliness, that uh, sense of just complete, really like hopelessness for myself, right? Like, this is the way I look. No one's ever going to love me. um, what is my life really going to look like? All these really deep insecurities that I had. As soon as I poured that alcohol down my throat or smoked the weed or whatever it was I was imbibing in on that day, it was like, oh my God, it was like, letting off your coat, your heavy winter
Ah,
coat. You know what I mean?
yep.
And it, it just relaxed me in ways that I can't tell you. And
Mm.
but that led me nowhere quickly. Um, it led me nowhere quickly.
But it is good that you describe it in those simple terms, because so many people out there they have no clue. They think, just don't do it. Come on, it's a moral failure here. You're weak. There is still these kind of attitudes and the kind of stigma there that sometimes just drives me up the walls because people don't understand the pain that you are inside, deep inside, and the darkness that you're experiencing, however nice the outside looks like. And you described it so perfectly with the walls that you have put up and those masks that you're wearing. My goodness, I again been there, done that, vomited on the t-shirt. But at that stage, you're young, you're absolutely, hey, yes, I can do it. Here you were on quite a high achiever level, from a learning point of view, from a school point of view. What did you do job-wise?
What did I do? What? I'm sorry, I
Job-wise,
didn't catch that.
money-wise, when you
Oh,
went out, what was your profession?
yeah. So let me just back up if you don't mind. So in high school, where my tipping point happened is in my senior year of high school is when I got in my car accident. And I was on my way to my after school job, and this guy pulled out in front of me. He never saw me. And he came into my lane of traffic, and I hit his car. And all of his passengers um, passed away. And I had such, yeah, I mean, it's still very tender to talk about that. But it's so important in my story, even though not
Yes.
everyone has the same trauma. It's that We all reach these depths of despair and darkness that are only our own, right? And for me, that was the pinnacle of my darkness.
Wow.
I uh, adopted this mindset that I had killed 3 people. That's the way I spoke to myself. I was never legally responsible. I wasn't drinking. There was no liability on my part at all. But I adopted that mindset because I hit that car, um, that it was my responsibility, and therefore I should pay the price for that, that I should sacrifice my own life. And so I just plummeted into addiction, and chronic illness, and things got really terrible for like 10 years, and then I got clean
Good.
and sober.
I thought there was a little interlude there, but you went straight from trauma to big trauma. Congratulations. You took the
Yeah.
fast track, so to speak. Okay, okay. Show off. Um, Bloody hell. That was quite a few years ago. Um, what were the support services then? Did you get any trauma counseling? Did you get exposed to any kind of psychological help? Were the people around you aware how about your darkness and what your true feelings were, or did you keep them bottled up?
Those are great questions. Surprisingly, I did have access to therapy immediately at the
Ah,
hospital. I
beautiful.
went to the hospital also that night, and they had they have a trauma team that takes care of people right then and there. So I
Oh,
had an
beautiful.
appointment scheduled the next morning, but I went to that therapist, and I mean, I was so traumatized, so traumatized. I saw the whole accident and everything that happened within it.
Hmm.
And so I was so shut down and so traumatized that I couldn't speak to this person. They were there, they were willing to help me, they were trying to help me, but I couldn't even talk to people for years. I mean, this wasn't just that moment. And so I just had told my mom that I didn't want to go back.
Right.
And unfortunately, my parents were not equipped to help me deal with it. They did the best they could knowing what
Mm,
they knew,
mm.
but no one really understood what was going on for me, or the extent of of how to help me. You know what I mean? Move through that in any ways, really, for years.
Wow. Um, how often would you relive the accident?
So it's this constant mind movie. It's used to be focused right over here. I could literally see it like a separate viewing per se that would play no matter what I was doing, wherever I went, driving, riding, um, just making dinner. It didn't matter. It was just this constant playing over and over of all of the events that happened in that moment of the car accident, and then what happened after the car accident.
My goodness. Did that start straight after? I assume because that's sort of the typical, or it certainly was with me. I was reliving it constantly, and that's probably quite normal in the first 3 months, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months ballpark. Um, but was that happening then? And did it continue like that?
It was immediate. Yeah,
Wow.
it started immediately, and it lasted for years for me, literally for years. I don't remember how long, but a number of years. Because that's why I was drinking, right? Like I couldn't escape myself anywhere. This was haunting me day in and day out. I would see these people that perished. I would, I don't want to traumatize the audience, but all the things that I experienced, it would not leave me. Literally, it would not leave me.
Wow. That's interesting. I mean, this kind of ongoing film subsided. I don't know how long it would take. It was probably a shortish time for me, but I then had massive flashbacks And often these flashbacks would
Mm,
change not towards the incident or one of the traumas, but some minor trauma, some weird shit I said to someone when over any time in the last 40 years, I would get that flashback immediately as if someone punches me in the stomach, and I would go like that. So I had these kind of
mhm,
uh, very weird things dozens of times a day. But for you, it was an ongoing thing rather than these kind
mm,
of sharp stimulations of fight and flight. Is that
yes.
correct?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes,
Uh,
that's exactly it.
Far out. Oh, that's torture. Because at least my mind from now and then wanted to guide me towards something else, and I could focus on something else. What were the other symptoms like for of PTSD? Here you had the
Mhm.
constant replaying of it. I assume your sleep was shite.
Yes. Yeah. No sleep. Sleep was not good at all.
Mm,
Um, I was so hyper vigilant.
mm,
I became panicked. I thought everyone was going to die all of the time. Um, if my mom said she was going to be home in 5 minutes from the grocery and she wasn't home for 15 minutes, then I was a panicked mess. Like, oh my God, she's dead on the side of the road.
mm,
It was always living that way, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, never feeling safe. Um, Anxious, constantly anxious, just in anticipation of what might or could happen.
mm.
Um, I mean, angry, irritable, discontent. Yeah, I mean, all of them, right? All of the symptoms that are described in any of the literature that you read about PTSD
Mm.
at some point or another, night terrors. Um, I've experienced them.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Many of them sound like good old friends to me. Luckily, they were not as present there, but they made themselves known, typically at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, when I got the worst of Stephan being played on repeat. Um, and it is a hard life. And I mean, here you were then finally. Um, but finally, you fell back onto those things that you learned in your teenager years. That is helping me. That's helping me. When you were drinking
Yes.
at that time, what was happening? Did you go straight from give me as much vodka as I can so I black out? Or did you go to, actually, now the pressure is coming off, and let's just, I don't know, watch a film or something like that to distract myself? What happened when you were drinking?
Oh,
What happened when you were
yeah.
using?
Yeah, no. Yeah, it wasn't the latter with the film.
Yeah.
It was definitely as much substance as I could get in my
Yeah.
body as quick as I could get it in.
Yeah.
I used to live in this way that I would have my bong loaded with marijuana before I went to sleep, and as soon as I opened my eyes, I would smoke before I even, went to the restroom, anything. I had to be high to have my eyes open and to be functioning. I could not face the day without it, literally.
Hmm. You were noticing, you were using the word functioning. One would argue that this is rather a liberal use of that word. Were you working at that
Yeah,
time?
yes, at that time I was let's see, that would have been I was probably about oh, I got in the car accident when I was 17.
Yeah.
So, this time in my life that I'm talking about, I was about 19 years old. I was bartending and waiting tables.
Uh,
I moved all the way to the other end of the country because I wanted to get as far away from myself as I could. I kept trying to outrun myself, I was moving all over the country trying to outrun myself. But yeah, I held down a job, I paid for my own place. I was functioning in those sorts of ways. Absolutely. Yeah.
when you smoked, did the film continue, or did the colors change? Here you were saying it went on for years. What happened with that film?
Yeah, I don't, it's one of those things like I can't tell you the moment that it went away or,
Mm,
any of those things. I think that I don't know that any of it ever went away when I smoked or I drank or any of those things. I think what it did was dull it,
mm,
right? It was
mm,
like, it
mm.
just got it to a point where it's like, okay, I can tolerate this,
Nice.
sort of
Yeah, nice.
easier than without it.
It's beautiful. I didn't laugh for good 5 years, and I describe it in no, there. My steps to sobriety. I described the moment when I was sitting with friends in a German beer garden, and we had on empty stomach had a liter of beer, and suddenly I heard this laughter, and I was nearly looking around and didn't realize where the laughter was coming from. It came out of me, and it was the first time for five
Oh,
years that I had laughed.
mm,
Probably not long before my teeth had been fixed, because prior to that, these artificials, there's temporary crowns. They were not reliable. So you open your mouth and suddenly go clink, something falls out. It's just shit. You can imagine what that does
yes.
to you as a teenager. And there
Yes.
was this alcohol washing over me, this wave of dopamine washing over me, and I could love a deep belly love. And regrettably, that was such a powerful moment. It was forever linked in my memory as, wow, alcohol is good. And so, these are
Right.
the things, and that is often something that people don't recognize. So therefore, I'm so grateful to you that you're so open and honest about your addiction, because only then other people can understand where we have felt at home in a scenario where we were warming our hands on the house fire that was burning around us. Okay. So because there was so
Yeah.
much shit going on, no doubt, because of the addiction, because of our broken coping mechanisms, if you want to look at them like that. At the
Mhm.
time, they suited us very well because nothing else was working, what we had experienced up until that time. So I'm so,
That's right.
so, so thankful, full of gratitude to you that you're so open and authentic about that. But as in
Oh,
all
yeah,
of
sure.
these stories, when you're falling back onto addictive coping mechanisms, you have got three outcomes. You're either dead, you're in rehab, um, or you're still in the middle of your addiction. But that
Yeah.
doesn't is long. The third one is typically jail. So jail, dead, or rehab. Which one did you
Yeah,
choose?
basically.
Can our candidate today? Which door would you like to open?
100%.
So how
Yeah.
did it continue? When was there one moment that brought home to you that shit, I can't continue like that? Or was there a series of events that led you to a different path?
Yeah. So I knew for a long time that I had a problem with drugs and alcohol, a long time. But I like to say, sort of like what you were just talking about, is um, that, alcohol and drugs saved my life, really. Had I not had that kind of elixir um, to get me to a place that I could receive help, that I could get different kinds of support, I would have
Mm,
taken my life. There's
mm,
no doubt about it.
mm, mm,
Um, and so for me, I'm forever grateful for that. And
mm,
how I can see that today. But what ended up happening for me is in these moments where I would know, Marcy, this is out of hand. You're absolutely out of hand. You have zero control over what it is that you're doing,
mm,
and you need to stop. So I'd say, I'm not going to drink no matter what happens. I'm not going to drink tomorrow. I'm going to start tomorrow and I'm done drinking. Right. And you could fill in the rest of the story, right? By 10 a.m., I was already drinking again, right? And I did this over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And then my daughter, she's not my biological daughter, but I've raised her a lifetime since she was 8 years old, and she's 31 now. And she she was the catalyst for me. I had picked her up from school one day, and we were driving back to the bar, because that's what you do as a good parent. You pick your kid up from school and take them to the bar. It's what my dad did with me. And so we were on our way back to the bar, and it was like I was living in a parallel reality at that moment. It was as though I was the little girl sitting in the passenger seat, and I was the grown up, and my dad was in the car with us, right? It was like all of this was happening all at the same time.
Mm.
And here she is, she's telling me all about her day at school and what her friends did and what she did and all that she learned. And I realized I'm focused on getting my next drink. I don't really care about what she's telling me. I'm not really interested in what she's sharing with me. Um, oh my God, I'm doing exactly what was done to me to
Wow.
her.
Wow.
And sometime within the next 10 days, I went to my first 12-step meeting, and I've never taken a drink of alcohol since that day. But
Wow.
she is for sure the primer for me.
What a beautiful, beautiful insight there. Oh, and that was when she was 8. Wow. So you have got
No,
a hell of a
yeah,
long time.
10 years. She was actually 10 when this happened. And yeah, so I've been 21 years clean and sober.
Congratulations. Wow. Bloody hell.
Oh, thank you so much.
No relapse?
No relapse. No
Oh,
relapse.
okay. Then you are one of the rarity, because 80% relapse rate in the first year, that's pretty much a given. Because
Yes.
ultimately, firstly, there is a lifetime of trauma and a lifetime of poor coping mechanisms. And then suddenly you flick the switch and you never fall back onto the old coping mechanisms. So most people fall back onto what they know. Having said that,
Totally.
sometimes addiction is really, really sneaky beaky. And so we change our addictions. So if if you have
I
drunken
did
like
that.
if oh excellent, excellent. At least you're admitting to it. Come on, let's talk cross addiction. Come on, what did you get up to?
Oh, yeah, my big thing was work.
Uh-huh.
Oh, so
Yes.
I entered a career of mortgage banking. And I mean, that's like the worst place you can possibly end up, because it's sales, right? So you can perform at whatever level you choose, right? As hard as you want to work, as hard as you get to work. Nobody's like, no, no, go home, Marcy. No, right? So I got my worth and my value from what I did, right? So I just switched over and just carried on right in that vein. Yeah, it's a real thing, and it almost killed me, just like alcohol.
Beautiful. And you could argue that you actually didn't switch to something new, because the people pleasing at school was ultimately exactly that. You're becoming
Yes.
the star pupil, so to speak, was exactly that. You just fell back onto it. And the big difference is this is far more socially accepted. It's okay that you work yourself into the grave. Look what she did, what she achieved. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Oh, shit. Okay, don't I
Yep.
know that?
Yeah.
Okay, so when did the next burnout then happen? Just out of interest.
Yeah. So all my life I struggled with chronic illness because of the cleft lip and palate. It
Mm,
created so many other issues.
mm,
And so I've always had that as a problem, but I just ignored it, honestly, right? I mean, I go to the doctor, they give me antibiotics or whatever,
yeah,
and but I never got well. I never felt well. And so as I was
interesting.
working like a maniac, I worked like 7 days a week from the moment I woke up until the moment I went to bed. I mean, like full blown addict. And and I have a lot of really cool trophies for it. But I did almost kill myself. And so what ended up happening is this chronic illness just kept mounting and mounting, right? I kept collecting viral infections and then bacterial infections in my
Mm,
body.
mm,
And I had like 5 bacterial infections. One was a systemic E. coli infection. And and then I started having these really strange sensations in my body. And come to find out, it was tremors. I was starting to have neurological tremors. And so I mentioned it to my doctor eventually. And I said, I can't be a tremor. Like, I don't even know what tremors are. So anyway, upon further investigation, it turns out that I was having some tremors. And she's like, Marcy, look, you have to stop working. And I'm like, but you don't understand. Like, I'm so busy. Like, my career is blooming and like I just can't stop working. She's like, okay, but I'm telling you right now, like, your body is sounding the signal and you're not listening. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take off the week between Christmas and New Year's. Okay. Will that make you happy? And then I'm going to cut my work day down by 2 hours a day when I go back to work. Right. It's like, I'm only going to drink 1 beer today. Right. I mean, it's the same language. It's the same thought process. And I did those things for a couple of months. And finally, on February 6th of 2021, I had met my match. I could not stand it for 1 minute longer. I was having tremors in my brain so bad. My heart was beating erratically. I was having shortness of breath. I mean, it was a multi-system failure. What was going on. And I just said, like, I raised the white flag. I called my branch manager. I said, I'm really sick. Something is really wrong. She said, take the weekend off. We'll cover your business and you can come back on Monday. Well, as soon as I gave my body that kind of permission, my body was like, that was it. 40 days I was bedridden.
I bet you.
And
I would
oh,
have not
and I had
expected
it.
anything else.
Yeah, and I had like 3 days in a row that I literally those nights I thought I was dying. I mean, I felt like I stared death in the eye. But it was COVID and I wasn't going to go to the hospital because I already had such a mess and I knew if I caught COVID I was a
Uh,
goner.
uh,
So I didn't go to the hospital and but I stared death in the eye and that was the change. That was the turning point for me in a way that nothing else has ever been. It realigned my entire life, my entire way of being. It was the greatest gift I've ever received, quite frankly. It is, I'm so grateful, truly. I don't live my life anything like that at all today. And
mm.
I'm so grateful.
We know that issues lie in the tissues. And whilst it sounds like a cliche, it is so true. We
Yeah.
are increasingly accepting in the Western medicine world things that were known for 3,000, 5,000 years in the Eastern medicine, the link between spirituality and the physical body. And
Yeah.
we can literally, there are enough experiments now to actually prove every single statement, every single maybe cliche that people were saying. There
Mhm.
is so much nowadays that we can prove. So bottom line is, what you're describing is so real to me. It's something I've seen again and again in the people around me, and I certainly experienced the same again and again with myself.
Mhm.
What strikes me so much is that you are a stubborn woman. I mean, here was the universe hitting you over the head with 2x4s and said, "Come on, wake up, woman! No, 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 no! I just want
Yeah.
to do another year of nonstop work. No, no, leave me alone. Wake up!"
Yes.
And with hindsight, when you look at it, you must admit, hey,
Ugh.
okay, but at least, okay, whilst it took some time, you actually got away with it. Because often enough, people do not get away with it. They work themselves literally to death. Let it be then finally with accumulation of stress to a degree that your body packs up with a heart attack, followed by 2 strokes, followed by liver failure,
Yes.
and then that's it. And it is so brutal when when I hear such stories, because they're out there all the time.
Yeah.
People are not used to looking after themselves. And I'm in my 50s. There is still this hardcore here. I'm a man. I work. Look at me. There is not necessarily the, hey, look, he's looking after himself there. He is taking some time off. He is actually, you know, um, meditating, he is doing spiritual work, he is giving his body rest, he is living mindful, he is all those kind of things that spiritually you can do, which does wonders. This is in the world that I live. And don't
Yeah.
I actually do know not anyone in my surroundings here. Luckily, I meet people like you. Luckily, I seek so many beautiful guests on my show, which are on the same journey because we have been so deep in the darkness and now we're in the light. What was the first modality that changed you? I mean, there you were. Ultimately, you are still a wreck. You're lying there, basically can't get out of the bed. That's a bad start.
Yeah.
What happens thereafter?
It was a bad start. Oh, it was awful. My gosh. Yeah, so the first modality I used was energy medicine. I found an energy medicine practitioner,
Yeah.
and she worked on me remotely just through the computer because I was so sick I couldn't even get out of bed to take a
Mm,
shower to go to her office.
yeah.
And so she worked on me remotely, and she gave me two things to do after the session. I could only tolerate like 20 minutes of even interacting with her. That's how messed up my nervous system was. So, I literally, probably within 3 or 4 hours of her working on me, 50% of my symptoms had eased. I mean, I thought I was like willing to buy the woman a house. Like I was so grateful for the relief,
Yeah.
because I felt so terrible. So I started with that. I've always been a long-term meditator and long time meditator. And so meditation. And then I went back to Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. Um, and then, really, over the last 3 years, it has been just this practice of learning how to regulate my nervous system. I don't know. Are you familiar with somatic work at all? Somatic experiencing?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I
Uh,
am, but teach us what it means for you, and how would you describe it to a friend who has zero clue about what we are talking about?
Yeah, so somatic work, I'm so grateful um for this work. So somatic just means of the body, right? So instead of the mind, which is a lot of the therapy that's out there and available to most people, is like cognitive behavioral therapy. It's all processing this stuff that's in our mind, try to name it, categorize it, reframe it, and so on. And so somatic is of the body, right? And when we have an experienced trauma, especially repetitive trauma, then what happens is the body literally fragments, the nervous system fragments as we have these experiences over and over again. And so that trauma isn't literally embedded in the nervous system. As you said, right? The issues are in the tissues. It's 100% true.
Yeah.
And so what happens is, because those fragments are within the nervous system, that is what is keeping the body stuck in fight or flight. That's what was keeping me working. Like, I'm not going to have enough money, I'm not going to be okay, I'm not going to be safe, so keep working, right? Keep working.
Yeah.
It's that's where the rub is. It's literally within the physical being. And so I found a somatic experiencing practitioner, and we started doing this work. And how it works literally is where you start to integrate the parts of yourself that have become fragmented from the trauma that you've experienced, and you integrate them back into a sense of wholeness within yourself, so that your body can operate as my 48-year-old self. Come to find out, my 7-day-old self that was in the hospital being treated like a science experiment has been running my life for the entire time I've been alive. That sense of fear and paranoia and panic and
Mm.
all of those things, that's who's been running the show. So I had to go back and get her and heal those fragmentations of myself in order to be able to recover and regulate the nervous system. I've
Mm.
created my own sense of safety in my own being
Yeah.
by doing this work, which is what heals the body.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And there are many, many ways how to skin the cat. Sorry, animal lovers. So there are so many approaches that can help there. There are the more mind-focused things, and they're beautiful and absolutely they're gorgeous. But there's for people like you and probably people like me, a more trauma-focused and physical body-focused things, such as trauma-focused yoga or other
Mhm.
trauma-focused exercises that are linked with deep breathing, with regulating your nervous system. They are a godsend. And that's the reason that it's not uncommon for men to go to their first yoga class and come out crying. And it's not because they
Yes.
have used muscles that
Mhm.
they didn't know they had, that too, but the sheer fact that they stopped their rat race, that they activated their parasympathetic nervous system, their vagal nerve, by deep breathing exercises and holding certain positions, by giving your mind the freedom to just stop for a moment and just focus on the here and now. And suddenly your body gives you messages, and your mind, or the universe, however you believe, however you tick, you will get messages, and they can be beautiful and can be healing, can be confusing, can be all of the above typically. And I find that such a beautiful opportunity for us to heal. And as with
Mhm.
everything, this is not something. I'm sorry, guys. Yes, we are in 2024. Instant satisfaction apps, tablets that immediately drop you 25 kilogram until tomorrow. Yeah, all quite nice. No, I'm sorry. Instant gratification does not work in healing. You can get
No.
near miracles. Okay, there are sometimes maybe a hypnotherapy session can kickstart you to get leverage in your healing. But guys, that is only the leverage. That is sort of someone giving you a push on your tricycle as a little little person. You still need to learn how to actually do the things. So that's
Absolutely.
beautiful to hear that. And it's interesting that you had a healer, an energy healer to start helping you. This is not so uncommon. And there will be people out there who say, oh, no, bullshit. I don't believe that. The reality
Totally.
is, well, take a time machine, go back to your great grandparents and sit down with them on the kitchen table and say, great grandma, one day we will have our food in little plastic trays that we're going to put in a box. And then when you push the button, 3 minutes later, it's going to be hot and steaming. Your great grandma would have said, what kind of mushrooms did you pick today? So, what we didn't.
Totally.
So, I think there is so much more to this world than we know. So, uh,
Yeah.
that you had an open mind is wonderful. So, what
Yes.
are the modalities that you're using nowadays? Because you're clearly a very different woman than the woman 3 years ago. You have come a hell of a long way.
I have come a hell of a long way. Yeah, I mean, my blood work is clear.
Mm.
All my medical tests are clear. They show nothing, no infections of any sort, no histamine intolerance, no
Beautiful.
mast cell issues. And these are things that forever doctors have told me, people don't recover from this stuff, Marcy. Like, we're just going to have to make you as comfortable as we can and give you the best quality of life that you can have. And I'm like, it's not an option for
Yeah.
me. As I'm not living like this. So the modalities that I most lean into, I think it's so important. This isn't really a modality, but I think it ought to be, probably in some regard, is developing a spiritual practice. And
So true.
that informs my purpose, right? I had to have a purpose of why, right? It can't be all suffering all the time, and that suffering be for nothing. And I completely believe that we are here to transform our suffering into meaning and purpose. That's literally where it's at. And I got really clear about that. And that's why I'm on your podcast, is because this is what I'm passionate about. I believe that anybody can transcend any experience that they've lived through. I believe that wholeheartedly. And so when we become mindful and purposeful in our life, then that creates space and openness for healing. And so I think alone, that is a modality, even though it's sort of veers off from what we normally would think of
Yeah.
as a modality. So I get really clear about that all the time. My spiritual practice is, I just really don't do anything without engaging in that every single day of my life. But really, like, hands-on things that I do every day are um, what we think, and what we believe creates our reality. So again, what we think and what we believe creates our reality.
Yep.
And now, I didn't believe this for a really long time. I read all the books about it because I thought it was really cool. Like, wow, that's so cool if that could really be true. I was fascinated by the idea, but I didn't really believe it, right? I believed maybe other people could do it or it would work for someone else, but it wasn't going to be for me, right? This is what saved my life. This is how I healed my body. I uncovered everything that I believed. I saw and found where the fear was embedded inside of me. Every time I felt the fear, I changed that feeling to a different feeling and a different thought. By doing that, I shut the alarm bells off in my body, which allowed my nervous system to start regulating. And by doing that, the autonomic nervous system could heal my body. This isn't like a gimmick. This is for real. This is literally how I healed myself.
Absolutely.
So those are the three things that I really rely on.
And it's beautifully said, because you allowed your body to heal itself by switching off the
Exactly.
fight and flight and allowing the restoration, the recreation, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the system that we are um, so yearning for. If you think about serenity, peace, all those kind of
Yes.
spiritual things, in reality, what you're saying is, can we just switch off the bloody sympathetic nervous system and get on with a nice, calm life? Well, duh, that is parasympathetic nervous system. So if you actually use modalities to actually switch off one and increase the other, similar to a thermostat that you change the settings, well, you can do that. And we all have got the power to do so. This is not something you don't need to go 8,000 meters up to the top of a mountain where some dude sits on a pinnacle and you have to meet him there. No, no.
No.
There is so much you can do, but it's hard to try to figure it out all yourself. And that is, I guess, where people like you come in, Marcy, who are going out there and are saying, well, yes, you can try yourself. Good luck. Or why don't you come along for a ride? I know a shortcut. We don't need to go 8,000 meters. We just need to do actually a Zoom call or have a 30-minute discovery call, and we'll see actually where we can guide you and where to go from here. I think we've got so many opportunities, and so many people just only get an inkling nowadays. I mean, to a certain degree, we are blessed to live in 2024, where it is
Right.
becoming more acceptable that there is a spirituality out there and that this is not something for dudes with some kind of orange togas, but in reality for every single one of us, where we can help ourselves and maybe come to a more serene state in which your body can give you solutions to problems, in which your body can heal, in which maybe we get influences from God knows where, God, universe, um, to actually guide us to become better human beings. And I think that is beautiful, but we need to stop the rat race. And I think that's what you are
Mhm.
teaching people, Marcy. You're an amazing woman. Bloody hell, what a story. Um, Tell me, if
Yeah.
people are gelling with you and want to know more about you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on all the major social media platforms: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. You can visit my website, marcylanglois.com. And if you're interested in working with me, then I will have that in the show notes, or hopefully you're willing to
Absolutely.
put it in the
Oh,
show
hell
notes
yes,
for
hell
me.
yes. Guys, look down there into
And
the description of the YouTube video and the podcast. And whilst you're down there, press the like and subscribe button, so that you hear more about the beautiful people that I bring onto my show, who make my life so much better, for that I'm very grateful. Marcy, I was just interrupting you. What were you saying? And?
oh, no, that's fine. It was great.
Sorry. No, it is so beautiful, Marcy. Your journey, your story has been uh, transforming me, because it gave me
Oh,
insights. It allowed me to reflect. It allowed me to feel certain things, and it was interesting to hear just a different take on PTSD, and yet the same outcome, as with me, the same coping mechanisms that maybe we are not so proud of. But your
yeah.
attitude of, without those coping mechanisms, A, I wouldn't be here, and B, without it, I wouldn't have become the woman that I am now. And that is so
Mhm.
beautiful to see. Your transformation is beautiful. And I'm so grateful that you came onto my show and let me and everyone out there know about it.
Oh, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to be here. Really, the honor
Cool.
is all mine. Thank you.
Fantastic. And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with intention. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.